This week in the League of Legends, Kalista is out for actual play. We also have a brand new patch which signifies the preseason for League of Legends. We have some exciting things on the PBE and some red posts to go over. All this and more, Spazzy Gaming.
This is Water Elemental.
And this is Axis, and we are here today to talk about the League of Legends. This is an ongoing show where we talk a little bit about everyone's favorite mobile-style battle game, and let's just jump into the meat and the heat. Kalista.
Kalista.
Colosto.
Colostomy.
Marksman champion.
We can't call him AD carries anymore.
A marksman who has all kinds of craziness to her. So, well, what is she? What does she do? She has slow auto attacks. That's what she has.
She is very hard to rev up from what I've seen. I haven't played her myself yet, but all the games I've played with her as a support, very hard to kind of wind up to.
She's a little bit unique, Unork. She hits hard, but she doesn't hit very often. Her mana costs are very punishingly high, and I don't know if that's true or if that's just because of the new mana regen system. It's hard to tell, but I feel like, if she's using any amount of her skills, she's going to run out of mana very quickly, which is fortunate for her because her dash is, it's just built into her auto attack, so you can do that without suffering too heavily.
Yeah, you're not reliant on actually using any spells or mana or anything like that to accomplish it.
Indeed. As far as gameplay goes, in the heat of the lane, she's got a really decent ranged auto attack. She's got a really decent ranged skill shot. Dash is good. Other skills are good.
Harass is really good with both her spear rip and the fact that she can just poke and then dodge.
Well, yeah, the fact that all your stacks of spear rip can be kept up relatively easily, even though her auto attack animation is slow, you can kind of dash up and do another one, or dash up into a Q, or anything really. And then the soul rip is just, it's a great finisher. The main thing that I was having trouble with as far as what she was playing as was really just getting used to dealing with those slow auto attacks. Probably one of the slowest marksman characters I've seen.
Caitlyn's a lot faster. Her beginning auto attack is slow, but that's compensated by the range. With this kind of character, it's compensated by the fact that she has a lot more mobility.
Yeah, the dash is built around the slow auto attack speed. You're supposed to auto attack slow, so you can be like, okay, I want to go up. All right, I'm up. So it's a little difficult to get a hold of, but once you do, you really just have to learn the timing. So unfortunately, these are skills, as far as the slow auto attacks go, that won't really help you with any other champions. But it's important for her gameplay. The only one I can think of is Draven, and that's just because you're sort of waiting on Draven to see where you want to go before you auto.
Right. And then you have who works well with her as far as support, because certain supports don't work well with this character.
Yeah. As far as supports go, melee with CC.
Yeah.
You're talking Alistair, Braum, Blitzcrank, Leona. I'm even tempted to say maybe an Orianna.
Yeah.
Maybe. But that's only because Orianna can kind of, use the self-ball into ulti to just sort of do some crazy stuff. And she's got the tank and the move speed burst to really make good use of it. But again, it has to be really ballsy Leona player.
Yeah, because if you play a more castle support like a Lux, an Annie, Fiddlesticks, any sort of...
Well, Fiddlesticks might not be terrible.
He winds up his ult, goes in, and then pops back out.
That's true. Or you just throw him on top of him, and he pops a fear into a life drain, and all of a sudden he's on top of him. It's really hard to break that life drain.
Yeah, so, you kind of have to keep in mind when you pick both her as an AD carry as well as support, what are you each other going to be doing? Because it's going to need a little bit more communication than, say, a normal pug group they usually have, where it's I'm just going to play him and lock it in. It's you kind of have to pick who you're going to be laning with, because if I have, a Nami, Lux, you're going to start throwing me into situations where me jumping in is not going to be a very good thing. You're pretty much feeding me to him. Even though I have control of where I'm jumping into, I'm probably going to be jumping back instead of forward.
It's a difficult choice to make, and you really got to play your support appropriately. Kalista, I feel like, is a very niche pick, just because, again, slow attack speed. She's not a very good duelist as far as what I've seen. She needs a lot of prep work to go into those fights. She's more of an outlying skirmisher.
Yeah, she's very good at chasing and very good at retreating while dealing damage. So if you're kind of kiting someone, she is very good at that. But as far
she's
as
excellent for a poke comp with a good initiator.
Yeah, but
so you poke them down with your other characters, and then when you're finally ready to go, you throw in your support, and then you use him as the anchor to apply the last bit of your burst.
Some people have been doing dual AD carries as well. I've seen a couple of those in normal gameplay where two people put together as Kalista and, say, like a Jinx or Kennen, AD Kennen or something. Just adding more damage to that group so they kind of throw each other in for the damage and then kind of play off each other's dodging and just deal out burst damage. Now, it's worked in some situations against two like really squishy characters like a Vayne and a Nami, but it hasn't worked very well against anybody with a tank group. So it's kind of interesting to see that people are kind of moving away from just the support AD carry and going AD carry, AD carry.
I would like to see more gameplay of Kalista saving her item, her Black Spear, for her top laner. Like, you get a really heavy bruiser top lane, and then when you go transition from lane phase to sort of the wandering phase, have Kalista and her top lane bruiser just sort of bro around, and she just hucks. Imagine just throwing a Darius into a team and just being like, it's your problem now.
Yeah, the problem is, though, you'd be missing out on damage because of the passive effect, where if you and your soulmate actually hit the same target around the same time, you deal that additional damage.
Sure, you're losing some power in the lane phase, but you're trading that power for some late game power, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, gold wins wars.
Gold win wars, not deaths. I don't know what that means.
So, it's hard to say. There's a lot of options with her, and I'm curious to see what people are willing to do with that.
Score?
So, the cinematic for her, I actually didn't like that much. I felt like it was very quick. It didn't have a good pace to it, so I was kind of just like, oh, these are things that are happening. I wasn't like, ooh, what is this character? It was just like, oh, she's throwing spears and shit now. All right.
He's dead. She's here. He's dead.
He's not very reactive to this horrific thing that happens in like 4 seconds. And it's like, oh, this is the second mist woman you've seen today. He's just like, just leave me alone. This is weird.
The first door he opens is like, let me in.
Come on. I'm cold.
Ghosts, fogs chasing me.
There's no sense of urgency at all. So
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. Her actual lore is fair. It's not very long, but it's fair. And the aesthetic of her character, it's a little edgy.
5 edgy, 3 me.
3 edgy, 5 me, a little bit. But colors are nice. I definitely like the color scheme a little more on like Hecarim, maybe.
Yeah.
But she's alright. They kind of play off of the same origin, so I can understand why. But I like it on other characters a little more unworldly rather than just, she's kind of an emaciated girl. Alright.
Thanks.
So I would have preferred that she was maybe a little more horrific looking. But that's just me.
She doesn't really have any animations that would show that she's been kind of dead. She just kind of does that jump. But I'd like to see like doing that weird like skeletal twitching thing you would see like from like puppeteer
Boner Lord stuff.
Kind of like, you know how like you have like a puppet that like gets reanimated, does that like crazy like twitching. I like to see that like as a passive movement thing where she like pulls out a spear, she like kind of like twitches for a minute and then like puts the spear
with
back.
The server lag on NA right now, it's not that uncommon to see her twitch around. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw an 8 her way. Again, solid concept. It's niche, it's unique, and it'll allow for a lot of kind of cheesy gameplay, which is something I'm a big fan of. Anything that can kind of shake up traditional team picks is good, as far as my mind goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to give her an 8. I really like her dashing ability. They kind of set out with this champion that wanted to be very mobile and kind of poke heavy and kind of have this mechanic of being very, very reliant on another character, which is strange for League, where everybody wants to be kind of gung-ho and, especially Theta carries, be the top man themselves, where it's like, well, I kind of need another person around for my power to kind of truly unlock my ultimate, my passive abilities, my passive damage. So it's kind of cool to see that they're kind of moving towards, you're going to require another player to do better.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I didn't quite give her a 9 or a 10, is just because she's very niche, and I don't like her aesthetically, so because she's not going to be a pick that you see very often, I don't think it contributes too much, just because, like I said, she's kind of a niche pick for a disengage, re-engage comp, and that's not very fun to watch, really. So ultimately, she's be a character I wouldn't like to see. Maybe I'd like to play, but I wouldn't like to watch. And League is a big game where you want to make characters that are fun to watch. It's a big part of their game, and so I don't think this was an amazing choice. But still,
you never know. Someone might find a way.
Yeah. If someone does the cool kind of bruiser or really fun blitzcrank stuff where you're just hucking blitzcrank at people, I think I'll start to like it a little bit more. But for now, not quite sold on the idea of what kind of team comp she's going to work well with. Never really liked those team comps. But that's it for the character, though. We're pretty deep in already, guys, but we're going to kind of blaze through this patch. It is huge.
Yep,
a lot of this stuff we have talked about, but we'll kind of skim through it, give you guys the sort of skinny on it. Just real quick, a lot of this we have gone over, like I said, but
we'll mention if we've gone over it, and if it's something important or has changed, we will go over it in full.
Indeed. So the biggest thing is, in my opinion, is they changed stats per level a little bit, and they changed the way that your mana and HP regen function works. So statistically, you have a grow rate of your character, and normally this was unified across all levels. Now it starts a little bit weaker, it slowly gets stronger, and eventually eclipses 100%. So it starts around 72%, 75%, slowly going up and up and up until it's about 130% level 18. And by the time you hit rank 18, you'll have 1,700% of your total growth statistics, which is slightly more than what you would have had pre-patch, but you're getting a little bit less in the early game and a little bit more in the late game.
So they're making it less dependent on hitting level 2 during like your first kind of like battles and stuff like that.
Indeed.
And so it's more reliant on the items than it is to actually level up. So there is less of that, okay, first blood's gone, that person's going to start snowballing faster than us.
Yeah, the big thing they wanted to get rid of is level 2 kills. I mean, the ability of getting level 2 and having your second skill is still insanely strong, but they wanted to make it less powerful than it was. So, mana regen changes. This is something really interesting. Almost kind of like Dota. That's what they're doing. All characters have a base mana regeneration. So, 8 mana per 5 or 6 mana per 5 or whatever. And your mana regeneration increases by a flat amount per level, plus your glyphs and runes and seals and all that. And items, rather than saying you gain additional mana per 5, will simply increase your current mana regeneration by a percentage amount, 25%, 50%. So if you have 100% bonus mana regeneration and you have 9 base plus the statistical growth of 4.4, it would double that 13.4 to 26.8 mana per 5. So this is something that they do in other MOBAs, some of the more classic ones. And the big reason that they're doing this is so that way mana is important again. For the longest time in League, you sort of had high mana regeneration with relatively low amounts of mana and low mana costs. So mana wasn't really a big issue. And this is something that I'm seeing firsthand on Kalista, where she ooms pretty fast.
About 2 of her Qs and she just kind of drops.
And so it's really dangerous to be casting a lot of spells, and I'm not sure how much it's working for other 80 carries. Or, I'm sorry, marksman. And
we got to get used to doing that.
Indeed. So I think this is an interesting gameplay change, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, casters are going to be a little bit less spammy, I should say. You know, you're not going to see everybody going out Lux firing her Q as often.
Well, mages still have relatively high base mana regen, but it won't just be, I have a chalice, alright, I'm fine.
Yeah, and that was the problem we saw with Chalice when it first came out. It's like, you get a Chalice, you pretty much have a high mana regen to the point where you can just spam.
So it'll be interesting. The chalice is still pretty good, granted, but it's not incredible. Alright, so let's kind of go over some general changes. So a couple of minor changes. Azir, they got hit a little bit, making him a little bit different. Amumu, slight reductions to his early game tankiness. Gnar got buffs across the board. Bonuses to Rage Gene, extra move speed, extra damage. Almost all of his skills got buffed in some way or another. His Q in both forms got significantly buffed, getting more or less base damage and more total attack damage scaling, which is ultimately a buff at all ranks. Hyper got buffed pretty hard, giving it a lot more damage and to both the base and the bonus damage to monsters. Wallop got a slight tweaking to have a shorter cooldown at later levels and a longer cooldown at early levels, which is pretty good.
Yeah, they pretty much made it so actually changing into Mega Gnar was, you know, worth going into, because sometimes you wouldn't deal damage.
It's really hard to get Mega Gnar at the right time as is, because normally people are like, oh, Mega Gnar's there, disengage, just wait it out.
See you.
All right, now blow him up in squishy form again, because he's super slow now. Heimerdinger, slight changes to the way that his base health regen and his passive work together. So he gets significantly more health per 5 at level 1. And he is no longer affected by his own passive for terms of his health regeneration. This is mostly to do with his health scaling and the new way that health regen per level works. So pretty interesting stuff there. A couple other minor tweaks. A big one, Rammus they're tweaking with again, making the cooldown of Powerball a lot higher at early levels, and making the Puncturing Taunt have significantly less armor shred at early levels and at late levels. So pretty bad nerfs to Rammus, actually.
He hasn't really been seen a lot lately. I don't know what the choices for this was.
They let him have the overlap with his two stances, essentially, and now they're kind of tweaking with him just because of what he can do with that, and I don't really like that too much, but that's just me. Tweaks to Sion. He's a big character with a lot of health regen, and the way that his passive worked is also getting tweaked just a little bit. Significantly less health decay per level, which is pretty huge. And his health growth in decay, based on the time that you're alive, also got nerfed pretty hard. So, I don't know. A lot of interesting stuff there. He's going to be a lot harder to kill in his passive state.
Sona, they kind of hit her on-hit magic damage aura ratio for Hymn of Valor. Kind of toned down the damage in general on that aura. And then they messed around with Aria of Perseverance because of the health regen and the way that works. So they increased the mana cost and they increased the base heal so that it's a little bit more needed. So you don't want to keep spamming it like old Sona is. So you just kind of hit it when it's more necessary.
And that's really it for big changes. I mean, there are a couple more tweaks, but it's mostly tiny stuff. Honestly, for a preseason patch, I expected a lot more character changes.
Yeah, we skipped over a lot of just the increases damage
minor tweaks, really. Nothing too big. It's actually kind of alarming how little they did to characters for this big patch. A lot of texture updates for a lot of characters. Nothing that we really need to talk about, guys. You'll see these in-game. There's a list on the patch that you can take a look at there. Fountain regeneration is a little bit more consistent. Rather than every 1 second, it's every 0.25, but it's slightly slower. Just slightly. You won't even notice. Death timers start to scale up a little bit faster, but a little bit later. So there's less early game swing, But in the late game, those deaths are going to be a lot more important. And by late game, I mean 35 minutes.
So anything past 35 minutes, if you die, it's going to be
pretty
huge.
Significant. Pretty quickly. Another big thing with the late game is the changing the way that the towers work and some of the buffs work and their interactions with said towers. So towers regenerate a little bit slower, but they hit significantly faster, and they have some powerful debuffs to prevent you from sieging too incredibly quickly. Inhibitor turrets grant shields to themselves and nearby allies. Nexus turrets will actually fire their laser, and it will reduce the damage that you do and your move speed, making it very difficult to fight under them. And certain buffs, Dragon and Baron, when they're scaled up, Baron will give you bonus to siege damage. It'll make your creeps attack faster, do more damage to both characters and turrets. And Dragon will just give you so many statistical bonuses that it almost nullifies the reduced amount of stuff that they do to you while you're weakened by towers. Spawn timers for Baron specifically have increased by 5 minutes, which is pretty crazy, but the new Baron buff is incredibly powerful. Not only does it give you a bonus to your attack power and your attack damage, it also significantly increases the effectiveness of your creeps. So it's more of a pushing tool now rather than a team fight tool, and I'm curious to see how that goes. Dragon buff hasn't changed too much, but the big thing is still there where he doesn't give global gold anymore and only a small amount of global XP. So it's more of something that for your jungler to grab, because the buff is still global, so you can grab that and give everybody in lane a quick boost. So that's pretty big, but it's less of, okay, we're going to trade this for Dragon. It's more of, let me get Dragon while no one's watching and see if I can get a quick boost so maybe people can win their lanes and get their gold that way. Big changes to jungle buffs and Smite specifically. Smite, depending on the big creep that you use it on, will give you a small temporary buff. And these range from things like knowing when a ward is nearby, doing significant damage to a tower on an auto attack. It goes on. There's a full list there in the patch note. Guys, I recommend checking it out if you're a jungler. Additionally, red buff and blue buff have changed. Red buff has a weaker slow, but it gives you health regeneration now. A significant amount of health regeneration at that. Blue buff lasts less long now, but because of the way mana has changed, that mana regeneration is significantly more important. So, all around, I'd say these are good jungle changes. The buffs with the Smite make Smite a much more interesting skill, and it trades out the utility that maybe you lose from an additional summoner spell, so you can get that back by having an additional bonus to your attacks from a jungle creep.
And the new Scuttle River monster is now in-game. He gives a ward when you destroy him and gives a move speed buff in an area.
When he's dead, he helps you out. So, in essence, he's some kind of ghost crab. Perhaps a
crawling ghost.
There you go.
And, yeah, it's pretty interesting buff. Check it out. Very cool. Has special effects. And he doesn't lose he doesn't regen HP once he's been destroyed like other monsters. It stays at a certain percentage until someone takes him out, from what I've seen, but always as someone been around to watch it.
Some big changes to jungle items specifically. Hunter's machete rather, deals 30 magic damage on hit to monsters over 2 seconds, and you will gain health and mana while in combat with said monsters. And now they can only be purchased if you have Smite as a summoner spell. So this is a big trade-off. The Hunter's Machete can be converted into a wide array of new jungle-specific items that, again, can only be purchased if you have Smite.
How often did someone buy a Hunter's Machete that wasn't a jungler?
It was relatively... I mean, it wasn't uncommon, but it was only because maybe you didn't want to pick up Smite for the jungle, so you would just get a Hunter's Machete and you would go for all that wave clear, all that jungle clear,
and you probably
having to sacrifice your Smite.
And you got the exhaust and then like a flash or something like that.
Because that's a lot of utility that you can get out of other summoner spells. But this can be converted into a wide array of items that all befit your character and will let you enchant them to really function well for your role. So first up we have Poacher's Knife, which lets you use Smite to kill a large monster. And if you do it in the enemy jungle specifically, the cooldown on your Smite is halved. You gain additional bonus gold and a huge amount of movement speed over 2 seconds. And the basic passive of the Hunter's Machete is increased significantly. The Ranger's Trailblazer will reduce the cooldown of Smite by 15 seconds as a flat line, and it will also deal half damage to all enemy monsters and minions near the target and will stun them. And casting Smite on a monster will restore 15% of your missing health and mana, and it also has that same boosted passive from the Machete. Skirmisher's Saber. Smite can be cast on enemy champions, marking them for 6 seconds, and while marked, you deal 18 to 69 bonus true damage to them on hit. You will have vision on them, and it will reduce the damage that they deal to you by 20%, in addition to that Hunter's Machete passive that's boosted. And finally, Stalker's Blade. Smite can be cast on enemy champions, dealing 28 to 164 true damage, and it will reduce their movement speed by 50% for 2 seconds. And then the enchantments on them. So these enchantments function similar to boot enchantments, except that they build out of items, and then you go a recipe into the enchantments on them. And how they work is pretty cool. Basically opens up 16 items as far as a jungler can go. And the first one is called Devour, which will have the passive that you previously had from your old Machete item, and it will give you bonus attack speed, magic damage on hit, and it will allow you, when killing large monsters, to increase the magic damage on your hits on this item by 1, and champion kills and assists will increase the damage by 2, which is pretty crazy.
No cap on that either.
Indeed. And the next enchantment is Juggernaut, which will give you 500 health, 10% cooldown reduction, and 35% tenacity, in addition to your item bonuses. The Magus enchantment will give you 80 ability power and 20% cooldown reduction. And finally, Enchantment Warrior will give you 45 attack damage, 10% cooldown reduction, and 10 armor penetration. So these are all very crazy changes. These essentially convert your Smite into a utility summoner spell or an offensive summoner spell that you can use to really just emphasize what your playstyle is.
And depending on which character it is, you can very easily customize those new weapons to be a lot more powerful. So if you're playing more of like a caster or jungler like Fiddlesticks, he has more versatility now than, say, a melee like a Zin or a Skarner or something like that. So it's cool that you can actually get in there with a lot more champions, not just the same like 12 that most people use.
Yeah, I think it's crazy mostly because you can be like, okay, jump down, fear, drain, smite to slow, auto attack. I really like the changes, and it's gonna make for some really dynamic and interesting gameplay when you're like, okay, what kind of smite is he gonna go for this game? Well, how much magic scaling is he gonna get? What kind of enchantment is he gonna get? It's gonna make for really interesting changes. The one thing I don't like is just that you will have to read a lot. You'll be like, okay, which enchantment on which item did he get? Because there's 16 possibilities that they can get.
Until you learn the colors. Yeah.
Plus the base 5. So it's like, oh, geez. So quickly looking at a character and figuring out which one he has, if you catch a glimpse of him, I think is a little bit of an eyeful to get to. You look at boots, and everybody already knows what all the boots do. And the boots all have relatively similar enchantments, but each one of these is crazy different, and figuring out the scaling and which is they're doing. It'll take a little bit of time, but I think people get used to it.
For those of you who do not jungle, we have 4 new elixirs that you can use. Each one costs 400 gold and lasts for 3 minutes. The first one is Elixir of Iron. It gives 25 increased size, 25% slow resistance, and 25% tenacity, and gives the buff Path of Iron. Moving leaves a path behind that boosts allied champions' movement speed by 15%. Very good for supports and tanky champions.
Makes you the shield wall. And guys, that 25% increased size actually has an effect on gameplay in that it increases your hitbox.
So things like Braum or think like Cho'Gath, like the bigger he is, you can start soaking up like spells and stuff like that for your allies to get around you.
In addition, you're 25% bigger. there's that much less distance between you and your foes, so it might help you get your autos in a little bit better too.
Yep.
Elixir of Ruin is 250 health, 15 bonus true damage when attacking turrets, and the Siege Commander buff for 3 minutes, which will provide nearby minions with 15% bonus damage to turrets, and it'll gain movement speed based on your movement speed. And I'm not sure if that stacks with the Baron buff move speed, which is also pretty significant.
The Elixir of Shadow gives you 40 ability power, 15 mana regeneration per 5, and the sorcery buff. Damaging a champion or turret deals 25 bonus true damage. This effect has a 5-second cooldown versus champions, but not against turrets.
That mana regeneration is huge.
Yeah, for 400 gold, that's a steal. Like, if you're hurting for mana, like, later, just buy that. And then finally, we have Elixir of Wrath. 25 attack damage and the Bloodlust buff for 3 minutes. Dealing physical damage to champion heals for 10% of the damage dealt.
And that includes damage from abilities, folks. It's pretty crazy.
And scoring a kill or assist extends the duration of the flask by 30 seconds.
Which is also huge.
Yeah, so this one pretty much is if you're an all-in brawler or an AD carry.
It is the snowball item. And finally, big changes to the mana regeneration items, guys. This is something you kind of want to read about. Basically, the Chalice changes is that it no longer has scaling mana improvements. It regenerates 1% of your missing health, or your missing mana per 5, I believe. And all of the mana regen items got increased slightly. If you can say slightly, it's just changes based on your character and the type of mana regeneration they fall under. The same thing happened with health items. Percentage HP scaling. Warmogs got buffed and changed so that way it gives more HP regeneration out of combat while giving slightly less in combat. So
kind of like Garen.
Well, Garen's passive is just turned off in damage. Warmog, you still get some, but you get 2% more if you haven't taken damage in a while. So pretty interesting. A new item is called Righteous Glory. Builds out a Catalyst, Crystalline Bracer. Gives you 500 health, 100% bonus base regeneration, and upon leveling up, it will restore 150 health and 200 mana over 8 seconds. And it has a unique active where you will gain 60% bonus move speed to nearby allies when moving towards enemy turrets or champions for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, a shockwave is emitted, which will slow nearby enemy champions for 80% for 1 second. This effect may be activated instantly, once again, to release the shockwave. So if you cast it, you can do it immediately to do the shockwave.
That's very scary.
It's a counter disengage tool, which I think is really neat, especially with how prevalent flash is.
We also have the Raptor Cloak. It builds off cloth armor and a rejuvenation bead and 520 gold. Gives you 30 armor, 100% base health regeneration, and the ability of Point Runner. Builds up to 30% movement speed over 2 seconds while near turrets. So it's kind of like a slingshot item. So yeah, you essentially want to use this while you're moving around your base. If you're doing a lot of defense, this is really good. I don't think it builds into anything, but it is neat to have.
Well, Wrecker builds out of this now.
Okay, that's true. You can't see on the patch notes unless you actually have like that tree open.
Indeed. The nice thing about Raptor Cloak is that it pools, so if you're just hanging out near a turret, you have 30% move speed, which is pretty cool. The new Wrecker has 300 health, no longer has ability power, 100% base health regen, 10% cooldown reduction, the same Point Runner passive, and the turret timeout, which prevents nearby turrets from attacking, is increased to 3 seconds. And multiple Wreckers cannot be used for 8 seconds now instead of 7.5. So, sort of an interesting change.
Kind of like you shotgun into like a turret, disable it for a few seconds, and your team goes in.
I don't know. For how cheap Raptor Cloak is, it's only 1,000 gold. I feel like it's a unique item. But with the way it works, essentially you have to go, okay, we're getting sieged. Let me go back and get a Raptor Cloak. Are we still being sieged? Okay, I'm really good at handling it now. I don't know. I feel like it's a very reactive item for a situation that usually doesn't last very long. I don't know if it's going to be that great.
No. And that's really it for patch notes. We covered pretty much all the important stuff that has been added. There's a lot more we had to cover.
Yeah, guys, the big thing to get used to, mana regeneration changes are huge. They're huge, they're huge, they're huge. Health regeneration changes are huge. They're huge, they're huge, they're huge. Not a lot of champion changes to worry about.
It's mainly jungle and these mana and health regeneration changes.
The jungle items you'll want to pay really close attention to, figure out which characters need what, and which situations will be good for your smite, because smite stuff is awesome.
Yeah, so the next time you go into game, before you go into that, go onto the website, look at what they've changed. Study. We only can do so much because everybody plays differently. You each have your own special builds. Look at the items that you use. See what items have been added. See what items have been removed, because there has been a few items that have been changed.
We're not gonna. I mean, we're not gonna cry too much for Meki Pendant, are we? But seriously. But yeah, guys, we're already pushing a lot of time here, so we're gonna kind of rush to the last bit of it. Snowdown Showdown skins are on the PBE. Pretty cool. We'll announce them as they get a little bit closer. And
PBE news about Taric that came out this week, that they're going to be giving him a full Scion quality rework.
They said they're going to replicate Scion's release exactly. So there's going to be a big statue of Taric. The people won't understand what they have to do. There'll be gems everywhere. It's terrible.
Every time like a guy walks by or Ezreal, you'll just hear slight gems, and the thing shakes.
I wonder if they're going to make him black or white when they remake him.
This is going to be the question of the century. What will they do?
Just make him Hispanic.
Hola! Gems are truly outrageous.
Why not? But that's it for official stuff this week, guys. We're kind of rushed to the last of it because we're pushing a pretty late timer here already. But first question of the week. First question comes from Mester12. He says, what did you guys like the most about BlizzCon? Personally liked Overwatch. I didn't go to BlizzCon, unfortunately. This guy got to have all the fun. So I'd say my favorite part about BlizzCon was Water Elemental.
Oh, I have to say that Overwatch was probably my favorite aspect of BlizzCon as far as games on the floor. Favorite memory is definitely getting to just watch the opening ceremony, them revealing all the stuff for the first time, and being there and getting that, like, there's this sweeping, like, wave of, like, everybody coming together at, like, this excitement over, you don't know what's going to happen at the opening ceremony. And, you know, you can watch it on the stream, you kind of have, like, that gut feeling. It's like, oh, what are they going to do next? But being there with thousands and thousands of people and watching Chris Metzen on stage go, for the first time in 17 years, we're going to start a new IP. And then you get to see the Overwatch trailer, and you're like, ah! And they're like, oh, that giant area that was sectioned off on the convention floor, that's full of Overwatch computers. You can go play it right now, and you're like, ah! So that was really awesome. And
I'd like to say, Red Shirt Guy was my favorite.
Yeah, I got to see that live, which was very interesting.
Poor man. Poor addle-brained man.
He had a good question this year. Good lore question.
But that's it for questions this week, guys. We're running really late, so we're only going to be able to do one. Normally we try to do two. But if you have a question for us about the show, about what we're doing, about what we're thinking about doing, about what's coming out, what's not coming out, anything like that, feel free to send it to us. You can post it in the comment section below. You can send it to our email at spazticgaming@gmail.com. Or post it on our Facebook, Twitter, or website, all of which are linked in the general information down below.
They're very lonely, guys. Please help the show. We love this stuff.
Or don't. I mean, God bless you.
If you guys would like a question of the week that we could ask you guys to kind of add to that, we can definitely do that too. Let us know. I've been kind of playing around some new stuff to get you guys more interactive, not just ask us stuff. It's like we can ask you guys stuff. So if you guys would like that, kind of switch it around for a couple of weeks. We're definitely in the stage right now of trying to shake things up. Let us know how we are doing with the new layover. If you like the layover of the new layover with all the buttons and stuff, or you like the old layover with actual statistics and patch notes, let us know. And we're going to be putting out a lot of new videos. The Shadow Destiny patch for Hex should be coming out on the 32nd of November.
Yeah, 32nd. All right.
It's right there.
Hey, you're the boss. Otherwise, it's been Axis.
And Water Elemental. Patch note long, 420 blaze it.